Okay.
Hi and welcome to Thursdays in the Garden, take 2. We had some technical difficulties with our Facebook live feed, so we're trying it a different way. But the important thing is we're all spending a lot more time in our gardens. I know I'm spending a lot more time at home in my garden than I ever would in March when I would normally be here working around the clock, getting these gardens looking nice. But while we're at home, you're probably spending a lot of time looking outside, looking at your garden, thinking about all the things you want to do, all the dreams and hopes you have for your own home landscape. And so we just want to let you know we're here for you. We are happy to help you with any questions that you have. And so in order to better answer those questions, we've decided to start doing a weekly segment called Thursdays in the Garden, all for the month of April. We'll be meeting you out here in the garden. Today I'm enjoying the warmth of this beautiful cold frame that we have in our vegetable garden and avoiding the wind, but it's a beautiful day out there and get ready to get out in the garden. We're going to give some great tips on how to get started. You know, one thing you're probably already doing is spending a lot of time just looking at that garden out there, wondering what to do. I think that spring is a great time to look around the garden, take stock of what you're seeing, what's blooming, what's not blooming. I mean, here at Five Farms, we've had plants blooming since February with our witch hazels. We've had hellebores blooming. If you don't see anything blooming out there right now, now's the time to take note of that. Fall bulbs, that's something we think about in the fall, but now is when we see the fruits of those labors. So if you're not seeing enough bulbs out there, now's the time to look around, see where you think you need a little bit of spring color, and make those plans for the fall. Another thing that we could work on this time of year is your basic bed cleanup, looking at perennials in the garden, cutting back dead foliage, some of the dead sticks on things like hydrangeas or roses. Now is a good time to sort of tighten those up, bring those back down if they're already budding out. But taking some time in the perennial garden to rake out the leaves, think about if you have something that you have a lot of, maybe a ground cover that you could be dividing. Perennials are really fun to have in the garden. I hope that you have perennials in your garden and you're not looking at a sea of mulch underneath your shrubs, because think about it, when you have a landscape and you have any bare soil, something's going to grow there. It's going to be weeds, or it can be a perfectly placed perennial or ground cover that's going to grow and thrive there. That means less weeding for you. If you have kids at home, and who doesn't want to have kids spend more time in the garden and less time on tablets? So get your kids out there, think about perennial gardening and kids. I mean, how many things do you know where you can take, say on a person, you couldn't take your arm and put it in the soil next to you and another person sprouts up? That's what perennials do. You can actually take perennials and divide them and have as many perennials as you want in your garden. So think about now if there are things that you can be digging up and moving around. I know my kids, I have 2 boys who are 8 and 10, they love getting out in the garden, seeing the perennials. We put in last year a big pollinator garden, just using divisions off of plants that we already had, and just watching those plants grow and change throughout the summer, and observing all the different kinds of wildlife and butterflies and insects that we saw on them. If that's something that you think you and your family would enjoy, now that you're all spending so much time at home, I would be happy to share some of our native and pollinator friendly plants with you. We'll find a way to get you some of those divisions. Comment in the bottom of this video if you are an active member, and we would love to get your kids excited about perennials. Another item that you could be working on in the garden, which makes a huge difference as far as, you know, visually what you're seeing out there and making you feel a little bit more satisfied about the look, is just putting a nice clean edge on your garden beds. We have already gone around and done all this at Five Farms. We're still in the process on some of our beds, but just creating that definition, making sure you have a clear line between where the grass ends and your garden begins. That also prevents the both sides from sort of creeping in on each other. It gives a nice definition. If you've ever had the pleasure of coming out here to Five Farms, you will have seen that we have nice deep cut edges around all of our mulch beds, and we don't have to use any kind of metal edging. We just redo that every year, and it's a great thing to add definition to the garden. We have certain tools that we use that we like to employ when we're doing that, which I can show you. After you have your garden beds cleaned out, your perennials are cut back, you have your garden beds edged, now's time for that super fun task that we all love, weeding. So again, if you've got kids at home, this is a great time to get them involved. I can tell you my kids love helping me out with weeding in the garden, and yours will too. It is not child labor, it is actually character building. That's what we call it at my house. And it can also be a professional development skill, because learning to work in the landscape is a life skill. Once you get all the weeds removed from your garden, that's the best time to put the mulch down. You don't want to have to do that job twice. It's not fun. Nobody actually likes to do it. So get the mulch down in your gardens as quickly as you can after you have weeded and edged, and that's going to help control moisture. It just regulates moisture in the ground, keeps those weed seeds from settling and germinating, and gives you a nice clean landscape. It's also a great time to look at those perennials that maybe last year were a little bit floppy, things that tend to get big and fall over. I don't know about you, but I tend to think about those things while they're happening and not months before, when I should have been putting plant stakes in place. Well, guess what? Now's that time. If you know you have peonies, or you have echinacea, or yarrow, or any plants that tend to be a little bit floppy where you have them, now's a good time to put a nice grow through stake over the top, or to put some supports or netting for vines, much like the clematis vines that we have up at our Five Farms clubhouse. Also, now is the time when those delicious little sprouts of your hostas, your daylilies are all popping out of the ground. We've got to get some deer protection on them. If you live almost anywhere around here, or wherever you live, I'm sure deer are an issue unless you have the fortune of having a fenced-in garden. Kudos to you. The rest of us are battling the deer, and we aren't doing all this hard work just to have a salad bar for the deer. So now is when you want to go ahead and get that first application of deer repellent out in the garden.
Go.
Thanks for joining us for our very first video for Thursdays in the Garden. We hope you enjoyed it and learned something. We would love to answer any specific questions that you have. Please feel free to comment here on the Facebook page, or send in email inquiries, and we would love to address those questions in a future video.